Hello everybody and welcome to the Leaders in Supply Chain podcast. I am your host, Radu Palamariu, Global Logistics and Supply Chain Practice Head for Morgan Phillips. My job is to connect you with global experts, thought leaders and executives in all things supply chain. I will do my best to pick their brains on supply chain and logistics leading edge technologies, leadership stories and personal success habits. Welcome to our fifth episode of Leaders in Supply Chain podcast. We are happy to have together with us today Tim Wickman, former CEO of MCC Shipping. Tim has 27 years career with AP Moller Maersk Group. He served as vice president in various portfolios for 10 years, and the last 9 years he was the CEO of MCC, the intra-Asia shipping specialist. During his term, the company became one of the most successful organizations in the history. From humble beginnings, made it to the 17th largest liner company in the world in terms of capacity, among top 3 feeders globally, operated 90 ships and had over 600 staff in local agencies in 14 countries across Asia. So great success story. Well, Tim, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So for today, as our normal series of questions, we will have questions regarding to the shipping industry, questions regarding people and talent, as well as questions regarding personal advice Tim might want to share with our audience. So without further ado, let's start. Let's deep dive into the first question, which I would really be curious, and I think a lot of our listeners would be, Tim. If you can tell us a little bit about the story of MCC, how did you start from early beginnings to where you left off? And maybe if you can derive 2-3 key learnings in terms of the success story.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's a long story, I have to admit, but I'll try to make it brief. It basically started back in 2007, where we in Maersk Line, and I was also working for Maersk Line at that time, where we through some help from consultancies and so on, identified that it was an issue that Maersk Line was not represented in the biggest market in container shipping market in the world. When we looked ahead, basically 10 years ahead where we actually are now, we estimated that close to 1 out of 4 containers in the world would be intra-Asia, which is obviously a very large share. And when you, as the world's biggest shipping line, have less than 1% market share in what is the world's biggest market, then you lose out. Not just in terms of profit, but you also lose out in the biggest growth markets of your biggest customers. And of course, your pursuit of lowest possible cost is a problem, because the scale that you have in Asia without being part of the intra-Asia market is actually not that big. So to make a long story short, we concluded that we have to do something in intra-Asia, and we then spent about 6 months figuring out how to do that. Because there was obviously various ways we could acquire an intra-Asia shipping line. We could set up a Maersk intra-Asia services, or we could do something different. And that maybe brings me to one of the key learnings that you asked for, being that we really listened. We interviewed our own people, we interviewed customers, we interviewed suppliers, we interviewed even competitors. Who kindly enough suggested various ideas on what would be successful and what would not. And based on this input, we concluded that probably the most successful route to take would be to have our own company, and it had to be in the region, and it had to be dedicated to intra-Asia and nothing else. So that's in 3 minutes basically how we decided to set it up. And then I got the call from the CEO of Maersk Line, and he basically said to me that since I've been talking about intra-Asia for so long, complaining on why Maersk Line is not doing anything in intra-Asia, he said, then there you go, now you go and do it. And of course it was a huge challenge, but also, as I saw it, a huge opportunity, because not being in the world's biggest market would mean that in principle you can only grow. And that leads me maybe to the second key learning, or how we set it up. I mean, we basically looked at what is Maersk Line good at? What is Safmarine, one of the other brands that Maersk has, good at? What are the popular shipping lines in Intra-Asia actually good at, and why are they successful? And then we decided to build up MCC around, you can say, the best of both worlds, as we call it.
Yeah.
But it was really from the beginning. MCC existed as a feeder operator in Southeast Asia, had 32 ships, had an organization, like a basic organization, only Southeast Asia. So when I came out to Singapore, whole Northeast Asia, we basically had to start from scratch. We appointed a manager in each of the countries, and then we gave some guidelines to these managers. And what we then did, maybe very unusual or different than many other companies, we basically said, these are the guidelines. This is what we want. We want to build up Intra-Asia, but how we do it, we leave that up to you.
Yeah. So you empowered them to take the best decisions.
Total empowerment. We basically said, we basically said anything which is legal, if this is what the market wants, you do it. Don't think about what you have learned in the past. Everyone came actually from Maersk. It was key people in Maersk. Don't think about what you have done in Maersk or what you heard from other companies. Just do what you think is right in terms of setting this up. Of course, a gamble, and in some countries we were incredibly successful very quickly. In some other countries it took longer time, because very much depended actually on the manager that we appointed and the people that this manager were able to get into his or her organization. And then I traveled a lot. Because the headquarter, I brought with me a colleague from Copenhagen that was running actually into Asia for Maersk. So he was with me in the headquarter, and actually both of us traveled around a lot, listening again to people and making sure that all our country managers were on the right path. We had very few rules that we had to follow, but one of the rules we set up from the beginning was that there could only be 4 layers between the lowest rank in the organization and me. It has then transpired into now 5, but still we have grown from basically nothing to actually this shipping line with the biggest carrying capacity in Intra-Asia in just 8 years. And we still only have 5 layers in our organization, and of course I have learned a lot through 27 years, and one thing I definitely learned is that the more layers you have in an organization, the longer time it takes to make decisions, and having to go through 3-4 layers of authority and managers, and so it's just not on. Especially not if you're on a startup and you have to make decisions very, very quickly.
And typically clients don't like it as well, right? Because it translates into longer time.
Of course, and this is why we also gave our country managers basically full authority to run the business, including pricing the business. And of course, looking back, was that 100% successful everywhere? Maybe not. I did hear from some markets that other carriers complaining that MCC is undercutting the market because, what we didn't have the knowledge in certain markets. We had our cost, but not necessarily a knowledge about what's possible to get out of the market. So maybe we were a little too aggressive in certain markets, but hey, in the first couple of years in a startup like this, you need to get you need to get some kind of base and some kind of mass, and then when you have reached that, then you can start, you can say, put things more into processes and so on. So we had actually a couple of phases, as we call it. Phase 1 was called explosive growth. And how do you reach explosive growth if you have many layers and a lot of bureaucracy, and especially not in Intra-Asia where things move so incredibly fast and decisions must be taken.
Plus, your client base is very diverse, and it's extremely also country dependent, and it's people with different needs and different wants and different realities and different geographies and a lot of very localized context.
Absolutely, it's one of the big differences in the Intra-Asia market compared to any other market in the world, and that is that most of the cargo shipped is actually controlled locally. It's not nominated from other regions of the world. We estimate about 80% of the business is actually controlled locally. And in some countries, we are talking 90-95%. So this means obviously that to be sales in an intra-Asia company, well, you need to go out and get the business. You don't get any help from anyone. So you need to have also the exact right people to go out and pursue this explosive growth. And again, some places we were incredibly successful. Some places it took a little longer. But what we did was we did a lot of best practice sharing in the beginning. So anything that worked well in one or two countries, we immediately shared to the other countries and said, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? The funny part was actually that those countries where we had to set up ourselves, meaning China, which we have split in 3, and Taiwan, Korea, and Japan, except maybe for Japan, then the 5 others were actually where we saw the biggest success when we started. Whereas Southeast Asia, where we took over an already existing MCC organization, it took a lot longer to actually grow. And I would even say it's only the last 3-4 years that we have really seen a major position taking from us in Southeast Asia as well. So, and of course that brings other learnings to the table.
No, but it's very interesting, because if we had to summarize, right, it's you're starting. I mean, it's the fundamentals seem to. I mean, it's almost like it's universal fundamentals. Like listen, ask your clients what they need, and listen to what they told you they need. Keep it simple. Create a structure that is simple, and 4-5 layers. That's it. And it's. If only more companies were like that. Give empowerment. I mean, empower your people to take the right decisions. Do what's right, not follow some norms. And I mean, it's great. And then communicate, share best practices. So, super.
And then there's one more. When you start up a company, I mean, you have a lot of. There's a lot of fun, but there's also a lot of decisions you have to make. Do you go left or do you go right? And now I don't want to sit here 10 years after and say that we were so smart and everything went right because we were really smart. I mean, I have to admit there was also a little luck. I mean, sometimes you have a choice to go left or right, and you choose to go right, and there are pros and cons on both, and then it turns out to be absolutely right. One of the things we did right, for example, was we didn't transfer all the intra-Asia business from Maersk to MCC overnight. We spent a whole year slowly transferring the business over. We had already established that Maersk really had to step out of intra-Asia if we in MCC were to be successful. Otherwise, we would
compete against each other,
and that would not have worked. We would have lost as MCC because it's all Maersk Line's containers. So we would have lost. We needed our own right for containers based on our forecast, and without anyone from Maersk interfering in that. So we also had another choice we had to make, which was, should we continue being what's called a feeder operator? I mean, should we continue to serve other shipping lines, or should we now just focus on intra-Asia and then carry Maersk Line's containers? And we chose to continue being a feeder operator, and in fact these days we are developing this further because it's actually more attractive in many corridors than the intra-Asia business in itself. And it's one of those where we could have gone the other way. We could actually have said, let's not do the feedering, or let's do it in a separate company or whatever. But then we said, no, let's just keep it because at least it gives us the flexibility. And man, that was a good decision, right? That was so. Sometimes I have to say also, a little luck has to be there as well.
Always, and I think there's a saying that success or favors the bold, or I mean, you need to take you need to have the boldness, the courage to take action, right? And you did, right? As a group, Maersk rightfully looked strategically at the market and say, okay, let's do something, and then indeed it turned out to be right. And okay, I mean, indeed, there's always an element of luck, but if you don't do, you can never be lucky. So.
and then I believed in this project. I mean, I really, really strongly believe that if we just did it the right way, then we would be successful. And I asked the at that time CEO for Maersk Line, Eivind Kolding, I basically asked him for authority to do whatever I needed to do without anyone interfering. And I'm thinking back, what were like the few key decisions made by me or by Maersk Line that this actually would be successful. And I think one of the key decisions was really that he basically said to me, listen, Tim, you get 5 years. You get 5 years and nobody will interfere or tell you what to do. Of course, we will seek advice and input from everyone in Maersk Line, but basically the only one who can decide what MSC should do is you. I mean, that's an incredible faith, I thought. And it's one of these things that I think is a learning, right? I mean, if you really believe in a person, and that person is very, very eager and have strong belief, him or herself, in his project, then maybe take a chance with that person. Maybe he said 5 years just to give me some time. Maybe in his head it was only 2 years or 3 years. I don't know. But I really felt that okay, this is up to me. It's up to me to make it successful. And I've been, the way I have run MSC, there has been some ideas coming from some country managers where I basically said, okay, you run with it then. If you believe so strongly in, tell me if I can do something to help you and what you need, but run with it. And then, of course, follow it very closely. And if it goes the wrong way, or I can see it's not following the original plan, I might assist.
Tweak it,
right? I mean, I saw that as a key role for me as CEO, to tweak ideas that my staff were doing. So having somebody who really believes in what they do is right. Maybe sometimes we as leaders should gamble a little on these people and let them have the chance. That's what people did on me, and it has worked. Okay, it could also have gone wrong, but it didn't. And I think that was very important.
And that's a super powerful message, because it's it stands true for business, it stands true for sports, it stands true for families, it stands true for a lot of things. I mean, the principle of trusting somebody, empowering that person to do, and that person typically will give his best, especially if he's also, of course, interested and believes in the project to do much better than anybody else could have told him or her to do. It's a great sharing. Great lessons. Thanks a lot for that, Tim. So, if we had to move on a little bit, we've had a couple of very good questions regarding the shipping industry in general from our listeners. So, Christian Go asks, do you think the trend of carrier consolidation will go on? Do you think there's going to be 3 or 4 major players left in the future? Or what do you think will happen?
Well, I think even I have been surprised by the speed of this carrier consolidation. I've always thought that. So now we're looking outside Intra-Asia, because Intra-Asia is very different. Intra-Asia still consists of more than 80 shipping lines, and I think the prospects for consolidation in Intra-Asia is very different from the other trades. But I've always said that carrier consolidation is necessary, but the speed that it has happened with has surprised even I have to say. I do though think that we are more or less with the latest announcement of COSCO and OCL and the Japanese going together and the Koreans didn't go together, Hanjin and Hyundai, but then one disappeared, and now the rest have kind of tried to forge some kind of cooperation. I think maybe in terms of carrier consolidation, that there's maybe not so much
more to happen.
Because sure, there can maybe be some regional players and so on, but the question is, will it happen through a merger or acquisition, or will it happen through just increased cooperation, like it's just been announced that PIL here from Singapore and COSCO will have a cooperation, and those 14 remaining Korean shipping lines will have a cooperation. I mean, maybe that's more the way it can happen. Maybe the Taiwanese will need to do some kind of cooperation instead of fighting each other. But will they actually merge or consolidate? I think maybe not. But hey, I didn't expect this enormous change in just 2 years' time. So I can.
You never know, yeah.
I can of course be wrong. Yeah. But what's happening in Inter-Asia, and the reason why it's different is, Inter-Asia is 10,000 port pairs. It's an incredible spaghetti of corridors and all these 80 shipping lines seem to all have their own
connections,
their own strength, and so on. And because there's not so much contracted cargo, because a lot is on spot or short-term deals with customers, a lot is controlled locally. Then if a shipping line acquired another shipping line, then what are you actually acquiring? Because you're not really acquiring the customers as such, because there are 80 other alternatives out there, and they can be priced away from you in very short time. So you're acquiring more the assets. So if somebody has great assets, okay, and you can get them cheaply, fantastic, but that's unlikely. If assets are great, you're not going to get them cheaply.
Yeah.
And then what's the point? And scale in Inter-Asia is different. Many ports that I remember seeing on LinkedIn, there was also a question about vessel sizes. And the issue in Inter-Asia is that many of these ports cannot even take bigger vessels. And people in Inter-Asia want frequency, and they want flexibility, and they want direct services. So the argument for larger vessels in an Inter-Asia market is basically not there. It's actually negative to have large vessels, as I see it in Inter-Asia. And when I say large, I'm just talking a plus 3,000 TEU vessels. That's already in my book too large for Inter-Asia. So if you consolidate to gain scale, you're getting a scale that's actually not that valuable, and you're anyway getting business you can lose tomorrow.
Yeah.
When I don't think this is confidential, I can maybe say that when Maersk Line took over P&O in 2005, P&O had a very large share of Inter-Asia business, but because Maersk didn't have a big focus on Inter-Asia, we lost every single container in 6 months.
Wow. And
we are talking several 100,000 FFEF containers gone in 6 months. And I think that just shows me that if you don't have the right product and the right attention and the right pricing, the business is gone, and it's gone quickly. Very quickly. So I don't believe much in consolidation here. What I do think is very different in Inter-Asia from any other markets is there's tons of cooperation between competitors. Where people help each other and share space, because you can. It's the world's biggest market. There's so much cargo out there. So you might as well, if you can improve your own cost by sharing your ship with somebody else, and they can then give you a new service which you couldn't actually do yourself, then why not do it? You're not really giving up on a competitive advantage. Maybe a few niche ports you can maybe have a slightly competitive advantage you want to protect. But okay, so let's say out of 10,000 corridors, there may be 500 corridors that can be protected. The rest cannot. So then you might as well cooperate
and have access to a lot of others that you wouldn't have access to.
Exactly. And I think that was one thing that I really had to get used to when I started in Maersk. Started in MCC. That this is very different Inter-Asia. I mean, we as also a feeder operator, so we are faced with this situation in MCC that sometimes the other carriers are our competitors. Sometimes they are our partners if we cooperate and swap slots, and sometimes they're actually our customers if we feeder for them in smaller ports. So, relations.
It's a very hybrid, forever changing dynamics.
So totally different mindset on how you interact in the industry compared to the other trades.
And a lot more interactive. I mean, interconnected and interactive.
Yes.
Then Ricardo Daza was asking, and Ricardo is from a different continent, so he's asking, what advice would Tim give to logistics professionals looking to develop, improve relationships with suppliers and service providers, specifically intra-Asia?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question 100%, but it actually gives me the chance to talk about partnership. Because I actually didn't mention this before when we talked about what MCC did differently, but when we set up MCC, we had to come up with this of course, you need like a tagline to your slogan, and we spent a long time thinking about that and came up with Your Into Asia Partner. Initially, actually, the thought was, because as I mentioned before, we are both competitors, partners, customers, for a lot of entities in the industry in Asia. But quite quickly I realized that in Asia, it's actually a little similar to South America. I worked 2 years in Argentina, and their relationship is also incredibly important. But I realized that this word partnership is actually something that you can turn into some kind of competitive advantage, and something that I definitely needed to rethink from my 18 years in Maersk Line. Because out here in Asia, the human relationship and the partnership feeling that you need to have with your customers, with your suppliers, with sometimes even competitors and even government institutions is unbelievably important. It took me probably a couple of years before I actually realized that I would admit. But this is one of the reasons I've been traveling. There was 1 year where my secretary, who what is it called? She takes care of all my business cards, and she said, "You do know that this year you have got more than 1,000 business cards just this year."
Wow!
And I thought, okay, that's a lot in 1 year. But it is actually, I think it's one of the reasons why we are seen as a very approachable and actually as a partner. People use this partnership left, right, and center, but
it's an empty word.
It's an empty word, but we are actually dead serious about it. I always believed that there cannot be a winner and a loser in a partnership. That's not possible, because then the loser will at first possible opportunity leave the partnership, and then it wasn't actually a partnership, right? So we in MCC sometimes forego short-term profit, I would say, with the mindset of a longer-term partnership
benefit. Yes,
and same goes with our relationship with terminals. Terminals is a big part of our ecosystem, and we pay a lot of money to terminals, sometimes too much, if you ask my honest opinion. But again, they have to live, and what we try to do with them is rather than say, okay, we'll pay you this if you can do this for us. I mean, again, establish these win-win scenarios. So I don't know where Ricardo is from in the world, but if he was coming to Asia, my strong recommendation would be to create as many personal relationships as possible and share or really seriously try to understand the drivers of the other person. Because everyone has their own world picture, right? I mean, you might think you know something, but you got to put yourself in the other one's shoes. Okay, if because it doesn't matter what you believe. It is what matters is what the other one perceives as being the truth. Right? And you have to understand that. You really, really have to.
Yeah, and how can you bridge the gap? And I'm happy that you touched upon this topic of partnership. It's true. I mean, it's a devoid of content. A lot of people actually after the win-lose, or they end up in this game, and it doesn't work. Long-term doesn't work. And I mean, it's and especially in the interconnected space of intra-Asia, you cannot, because I mean, if you screw somebody today, they will do the same for you tomorrow. I mean, it just doesn't work. So
and I think one of the issues is that sometimes people think that they didn't do anything to screw the other person, and they might not understand. And what I keep telling my own staff is, but it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what the other party thinks. So whether you think you've done something right or wrong, it doesn't really matter, because if the other party thinks that this was not right or something is wrong, then that's what matters. If we want to have business dealings with that person, then that's not partnership. Then right? It will never end up in a win-win like that. So think rather on what the perception is, and that goes for actually anything in life. What is the perception of the other person rather than what you think is right?
Yeah. No, yeah. A hot topic from Kasu now, and I think he speaks for a lot, and I think this is a buzzword that everybody or a lot of people use, blockchain. So the question is, how will blockchain impact and change the shipping value chain, and what needs to happen for it to occur in the shipping industry?
I mean, I also want to learn more about blockchain, to be honest. I think MCC has maybe taken a slight back step and let Maersk front a lot of various initiatives with Alibaba, with IBM.
With IBM is a famous one. Actually.
It's a famous one. There's actually a YouTube video about it, which I have seen. I'm probably not. First of all, I'm maybe not enough familiar with it, and secondly, I think we are just at still the learning stage, because these initiatives are also just to learn. The only thing I can say is just there is an incredible amount of bureaucracy and paperwork in shipping that I don't think people actually understand. And if shipping in general could be made just slightly more seamless, it would make life so easy for so many people. The only thing to be aware of is, of course, that a lot of people is involved in this today in shipping goods from A to B. Anything from customs, quarantines,
authorities,
inspections, ports, anyone. And of course, the more people and paper you take out of that equation, the less people have work. And that is maybe how they serve their family and create a livelihood in the country they are in. And of course that can be I would say not a restricting factor, because this is going to happen definitely,
regardless,
but maybe a delaying factor. Because people, of course, will fight it if you stand to lose your job.
And I mean, there's going to be some deep social implications to actually across the board technology. I mean, slowly permeating all these industries, and definitely blockchain will lead to that. But indeed, would we be better without so much paper? Well, probably we would.
Most definitely. I mean, some of it is ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. And it just creates frustrations. So
and time wasted in a lot of stuff.
I mean, this has to happen.
Axel Hersauser has a very good question. Given the strong increase in volumes and stagnant freight rates, who do you think will be the winners in the intra-Asian container trade?
So now I should say MCC, no? I mean, anything else would be disappointing. Hey, it's a difficult market, and of course many players, and we have asked ourselves many times, so how can we differentiate ourselves? I think the winner will be those that can actually differentiate themselves one way or the other, because almost any corridor you will have between 5 and 10 shipping lines who has the same freight rate, similar ships, similar transit time, similar closings, everything similar. So who will the customers choose? I think definitely technology and digitization is something which maybe not yet, but soon will be a differentiator. I think those shipping lines that actually truly can make life easy for the customers, truly, so that the customers really see a value in it, I think definitely they will benefit. Then I mean, for all shipping lines, what we call the unit cost, basically the total cost of shipping a container, which both depends on the cost you pay, but also the utilization of your ships and what you can actually do, is fundamental when the freight rates are very low, as they are in Intra-Asia. I hope also that reliability at some point in time will become more important and more valued in Intra-Asia. I think at the moment it's maybe not, because there are shipping lines with 3-4 sailings a week. So if your Monday sailing is delayed, there's another ship Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, and therefore reliability is maybe a little less important in Intra-Asia for a lot of goods than some of the other trades, because the frequency is so strong. MSC is a quite reliable shipping line because of all our feedering from Maersk and other shipping lines. So we have to be on time in the hub ports, as it's called. So for us, it's a differentiator. But I just don't think the inter-Asia market values that so much
yet.
And
you're probably. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're right. Actually, the more time will go, the more it's going to become important.
Yes.
But back to the point, because it feeds into the next next question. In terms of technology, what do you think, Tim? What do you think are the technologies that will really have the most impact for shipping in the next years?
I mean, if we look at the travel industry, the bank industry, where everyone is doing everything by themselves now, if a shipping line could come up with something where you have an e-commerce platform where the container is automatically assigned to a booking that comes in immediately, so the customers can actually,
see where it is.
See where it is. He's been able to do for a very long time. But when you make the booking, there's still people in the back end that have to allocate a container and so on to that booking. If that could be totally automated, I mean, just like when you book with an airline and then you have a seat and you even have 23C immediately, and then you actually don't need any more interaction with that shipping line. Airline. If we could get to that in shipping, I think it would be. I think that could be a major winner if somebody could do that. I think this thing Maersk has just announced also for refrigerated containers, this remote container management where you can actually see the temperature of you can see a snapshot of the temperature of your container with your goods inside, no matter where it is in the world. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, if I were shipping fruits for bananas from Philippines to China, I mean,
and you can ripe it, and you ripe it whilst it's on the cargo on the way.
Yeah, but I mean that's happening already. But now you can actually follow the process.
Yeah, correct. You can track it.
It's one of those big worries that fruit or refrigerated shippers always have had. It's suddenly actually taken out of the equation. And I think, I think there's even a premium version of it where if you pay a little, you can actually even download the data yourself. You don't just get the Snapchat or the snapshot, but you actually can download and keep the data. I mean, I think that's an amazing development. And I know it's taken Maersk several years to do, and of course a lot of cost. You need to have that chip into all the containers, but it's just one of those things that really improves the shipping of refrigerated containers. So I mean, there are still innovations coming, and those people who can come up with innovations, again, a lot of it in the digitized space, I have to say.
So increasing digitalization, visibility, traceability, transparency, of course. Yeah. And plus, I mean, as you said, it is probably costs a lot now, today, to have those units, but in 1 year, 2 years, I mean, the cost per unit goes down every year. I was there was a conference last week, TechX in Singapore. They talked a lot about technologies in logistics and shipping. 3D printing, for example. I mean, the cost for one of those things were, I don't know, thousands of dollars. Now it's $500. So that we will continue to see the cost going down. But indeed, whoever is going to be among the first to implement it, they will be.
I'm glad nobody asked me about the effect of 3D printing to shipping, because I think I think that is still an enormous question mark that even I have myself, and people are very split on this. So
let's leave it for today. But indeed, that can be very interesting. If you would be an investor, if you had one of these private equity companies, which shipping-related startup would you invest in? Is there any name that would come to mind?
I would not want to give any names. That's for sure. But there's a lot of interesting going on in the digitization space. Yeah. And I think one of the places where I think carriers may be going a little wrong is that they try to develop their own fantastic e-commerce solution, and I don't think that's what the market wants. And I also don't think it's the solution of the future. I think the solution is more portals which can actually cover all the carriers. I like an Agoda or Hotels.com or whatever, right? Where where even there you can find Expedias and Trivagos and so on and so on. So I mean, the winner will rather be those portals where so a customer actually only has to go one place and then he will have the whole thing covered. Not
aggregators. It's an aggregator.
Absolutely, not just shipping lines. I'm also talking here, custom brokers, maybe even forwarders for or truckers for pre and on carriage. Basically, the whole chain.
Ecosystem.
You can do it, yeah, and then you can choose, who you want to use. And I think all the money carriers are spending developing their own portals. I mean, hey, this is just my opinion, and I'm not an expert, but this is just my view. Those portals will be nothing else than connected to the real portals that all customers actually would want to use. I don't think customers would want to go to the carriers' websites. Really, they don't. Customers want to have alternative. They want to have 5 or 6 choices, and that they can get in an aggregated portal.
Yeah.
In terms of hardware, I mean, when you look at it, who makes the money these days in the supply chain? I mean, let's just face it, it's the terminals. So I still think, if I had a bunch of money, I still think there's...
Put it on a terminal.
I mean, the returns are at least...
quite a bit better.
and it's more stable. But terminals also have risks.
Yeah.
Major risks.
Major risks, actually. Yeah.
And who knows?
And now you have all these natural disasters happening as well. So then that's a different ball game. Yeah. So
that's a disaster for sure.
This is the end of part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, where we talk more about recruitment, talent, and skills gaps.